The bell above the bank door chimed a friendly, familiar sound. It was the same sound it had made when I was 10 years old, clutching my mother's hand as she deposited her weekly paycheck, a thin fold of bills she'd earned cleaning houses. Back then, this bank felt like a palace, all marble floors and hushed, important whispers. Today, it just felt like a bank, a place to get a task done. I was here for something special, something joyful. My mother's 65th birthday was next week, and I'd finally found it. A 1928 Steinway baby grand piano. It wasn't just a piano. It was the ghost of a dream she'd given up long ago to raise me. The seller was an old man who didn't trust transfers or checks from people he didn't know. He wanted cash, $22,000 in cash. It felt old-fashioned, but for that piano, I'd have paid in bottle caps if he'd asked. So here I was, standing in a short line, feeling the quiet hum of a Tuesday afternoon. I wore simple black slacks, a comfortable gray sweater, and flats, no power suit, no fancy watch. I wasn't here as Ava Monroe, CEO of Connexphere. I was just Ava, my mother's daughter, about to buy the gift of a lifetime. When my turn came, I walked up to a young teller named Mark. He had a nervous energy about him, his name tag slightly crooked. "Hi, Mark," I said with a warm smile. "I'd like to make a withdrawal from my personal savings account." "Of course, ma'am," he said, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "How much will that be today?" $22,000, I said, sliding my debit card and driver's license across the counter. Mark's fingers froze. He blinked, then looked from my face to my license, then back again. A flicker of something, confusion, suspicion, crossed his face before he masked it with a tight, professional smile. "Okay, 22,000. One moment," he typed. For a bit, his brow furrowed. The computer screen glowed on his face. He squinted. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but a withdrawal of this size requires some extra verification. Do you have a second form of ID, a passport, perhaps?" "I do," I said, though I felt the first small prickle of annoyance. "I've had this account for 15 years. My identity has been verified 100 times over." I reached into my bag and produced my passport, placing it on the counter. He took it, studying the photo, then my face. It's a strange feeling, being scrutinized like that. It's like you're a puzzle someone is trying to solve, and they're frustrated that the pieces don't fit the way they expect. He typed some more. The silence stretched. I'm going to need to get my manager," he said finally, not looking at me. "It's just a standard procedure for a sum of this nature." The prickle of annoyance grew into a familiar, heavy knot in my stomach. I knew what a sum of this nature meant when it was paired with a look like that. I just nodded. "Okay." I waited. I watched Mark walk to a glass-walled office in the back. A man in a suit that was a little too tight looked up, listened to Mark, and then glanced out at me. He was probably in his 50s, with thinning gray hair and a sour set to his mouth. He stood up, adjusted his tie, and walked out with an air of immense self-importance. This must be the manager. He didn't introduce himself. He walked straight to the counter and looked at the monitor, then at my IDs, then at me. He didn't offer a smile. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice flat. "There seems to be an issue." "I wasn't aware of one," I replied, keeping my own voice even and calm. "I'd just like to withdraw some of my own money." He picked up my driver's license, holding it between his thumb and forefinger as if it were something dirty. "Ava Monroe, and you want to withdraw $22,000 in cash?" "That's correct," I said. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "And what is the purpose of this withdrawal?" The question hung in the air, sharp and intrusive. It wasn't a security question, it was an interrogation. I thought about saying it was none of his business, but I chose the path of least resistance. "I'm buying a gift." He gave a short, humorless puff of air. "A gift." He looked me up and down. My simple sweater, my comfortable shoes. His eyes lingered for a moment, and in that moment, I felt like he was seeing a story he had already written in his head. A black woman in plain clothes asking for a fortune in cash. The story wrote itself. It was a story of fraud or theft or something illicit. It was not a story of a CEO buying her mother a piano. "Look," I said, the calm in my voice starting to fray. The account has more than sufficient funds. You have both my driver's license and my passport. My signature is on file. I've answered your security questions for Mark. I'm not sure what the problem is." "The problem, Miss Monroe," he said, emphasizing the miss as if to diminish me, "is that we have a responsibility to protect our clients' assets. We have to be vigilant against fraud. Funds of this nature, withdrawn in this manner. It raises red flags. Funds of this nature." The words echoed in my head. I'd earned those funds. I'd built a company from a single idea sketched on a napkin into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that employed over 100 people. I'd worked 80-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships, and poured my entire soul into building that success. And here, in the bank my mother used to revere, I was being told that my money, the very fruit of that labor, was of a suspicious nature. The knot in my stomach tightened into a cold, hard stone. The hurt was a familiar ache, but beneath it, a different feeling was starting to smolder. It was a slow-burning anger, the kind that doesn't scream, but instead becomes very, very quiet. "There is no fraud," I said, my voice dropping. "That is my money. I've proven my identity. I would like to withdraw it now." The manager, I saw his name tag now, Henderson, shook his head slowly, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. "I'm afraid I can't authorize this transaction today. Perhaps you can come back another time, or we can write you a cashier's check." "The seller wants cash," I repeated, my teeth clenched. "I don't want a cashier's check. I want my money, and I'm telling you, it's not possible," he said, his voice rising, gaining a hard, dismissive edge. "Our security protocols are in place for a reason. We can't just hand over that kind of cash to anyone who asks for it. To anyone like you." He didn't say the last 3 words, but I heard them as clearly as if he'd shouted them. They hung in the space between us, thick and ugly. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the judgment in his eyes, the casual cruelty of a man in a small position of power who enjoyed wielding it against people he deemed beneath him, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that this had nothing to do with security protocols. This was about him, his biases, and his inability to see me as anything other than a threat. I felt a sudden, strange clarity. The anger wasn't hot anymore. It was icy cold. It was fuel. I glanced at the digital clock on the wall behind him. To 14 p.m. I took a deep breath. "Okay, Henderson, let's play." I said, my voice now devoid of any emotion at all. "So, you are definitively refusing to give me my money?" "I'm protecting the bank's interests and our clients' assets," he retorted, puffing out his chest. "My assets," I corrected him, "and you're refusing me access to them. I just wanted to be clear. You can be as clear as you like. My decision is final," he said, starting to turn away, dismissing me as if I were a fly he'd just swatted. "Don't turn your back on me," I said. The words were quiet, but they cut through the quiet hum of the bank. He stopped. He turned back, his eyes narrowed. I pulled out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I looked at the clock again. To 15 p.m. This was the moment everything changed. I didn't fumble or search. I had my CFO on speed dial. His name is David, a brilliant, loyal, and incredibly efficient man who has been with me since the beginning. The phone rang once. "David," I said, my voice calm and professional. "I have a situation I need you to handle immediately." Henderson watched me, a smug look on his face, as if he thought I was calling some relative to complain. "Yes, I'm fine," I continued, my eyes locked on his. "I'm at the main branch of United Mutual on 6th Street. I'm currently being denied a withdrawal from my personal account by the branch manager." I paused, listening to David's concerned questions on the other end. "No, David, it's not a question of funds. It's a question of service. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to initiate a full asset transfer, everything. I want the ConnectSphere corporate accounts moved by the end of business today. All of them. The primary operating account, the payroll account, our investment portfolio. Everything." Henderson's smug look began to falter. The color started to drain from his face. His mouth opened slightly. The young teller, Mark, looked like he had just seen a ghost. "I don't care about the transfer fees, David," I said into the phone. Consider it the price of freedom. I want you to find a new home for our money. I'm thinking one of the black-owned banks we discussed last quarter. Let's make that happen. Can you get the process started right now? I listened for a moment. Excellent. Call their acquisitions VP and tell them to expect a wire for. What's our current liquid total? About 94 million. Yes, tell them that's coming their way. Call me back when you have confirmation that the transfer is irreversible. I ended the call. The silence in the bank was now absolute. The friendly chimming of the door. The hushed whispers, it all seemed to have vanished. The only sound was the frantic beating of my own heart, a drumbeat of resolved fury. I looked at the clock on the wall. To 21 p.m. 7 minutes. 7 minutes was all it took to dismantle a relationship my company had with this bank. For nearly a decade, 7 minutes was all it took for Mr. Henderson to ruin his career. I looked at him. His face was a mask of pale, dawning horror. He was starting to connect the dots. Connexphere, the name of my company. A name he probably saw on paperwork every single day. The name of the largest corporate client this little branch had. A name he never thought to associate with the woman in the gray sweater. Standing in front of him, Miss Monroe. He stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice as cold and hard as the marble floor. I don't think there has. I think for the first time today, we have perfect understanding. I leaned forward, my hands resting on the counter. My company, Connexphere, has banked with this institution for 8 years. Our accounts are valued, as you heard, at over $90 million. We are, by a very large margin, the biggest client your branch services. Our business is likely the reason you made your bonus last year. He was white as a sheet. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I didn't realize. That's the problem. I cut him off. You didn't realize. You didn't see a client. You didn't see a businesswoman. You saw a black woman. And you made an assumption. You decided I wasn't worthy of respect. You decided I was a risk. You decided my money was of a suspicious nature. I let the words hang there, letting him feel the weight of them. Well, you were right about one thing, Mr. Henderson. You do have a responsibility to protect your bank's interests, and you have failed spectacularly. You've just lost this branch's most valuable client. And when the regional director calls you in an hour to ask why $94 million just walked out the door, you can tell him it was because you refused to give me $22,000 of my own. His eyes were wide with panic now. Please, Ms. Monroe, it was a mistake, a procedural error. I can get you your cash right now. Let me just. He started to turn, desperate to fix it. Stop, I commanded. He froze. It's too late for that. This isn't about the $22,000 anymore. It's about the principle. It's about the disrespect, you know. Our company has a clause in our corporate banking agreement. It's a values clause, something my lawyers insisted on. It states that if we find the bank's actions or representatives to be in violation of our corporate ethics, which include stringent anti-discrimination policies, we have the right to an immediate review of the relationship, and that includes the staff who manage it. I picked up my purse. I looked him straight in the eye. So no, I don't want the cash anymore. Not from you. Not from this bank. As of this moment, we are moving all of our assets. The call has been made. And as the CEO of your now former largest client, I am exercising our contractual right to demand a formal review of your management. In fact, I'm not demanding, I am telling you, with the full backing of my board, that your position as manager of this branch is terminated, effective immediately. Consider this your notice. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The words landed with the devastating finality of a judge's gavel. He just stared at me, his mouth agape, utterly broken. The little king of this marble castle had been dethroned. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the bank on me, the other customers, the tellers, the ghost of Mr. Henderson. The air was thick with their shock. The bell above the door chimed as I walked out, but this time it didn't sound friendly. It sounded like a final, sad goodbye. The moment I got into my car, the icy calm shattered. My hands started to shake. I gripped the steering wheel. my knuckles turning white. And then the tears came, not tears of sadness, but hot, angry tears of sheer emotional exhaustion. I cried for the 10-year-old girl who thought this place was a palace. I cried for my mother, who had taught me to be polite and patient, virtues that had been thrown back in my face. I cried because, even after all the success, after all the magazine covers and awards and keynote speeches, in a simple bank on a Tuesday afternoon, my worth was still reduced to the color of my skin. The victory felt sickeningly hollow. I hadn't wanted to fire anyone. I hadn't wanted a confrontation. I just wanted to buy my mom a piano. After a few minutes, I wiped my eyes, took a shaky breath, and started the car. I didn't drive home. I drove to my mother's house. She was in her garden, humming to herself as she tended her roses. She looked up and smiled when she saw me, her face a beautiful map of her life's joys and worries. "Ava, honey, what a nice surprise. Is everything okay?" she asked, immediately sensing my fragile state. I sat down on the porch steps next to her, and I told her everything: the piano, the teller, the manager, the phone call, the firing. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time, her hand resting on mine. "I'm so sorry that happened to you, baby," she said softly, her voice thick with a sorrow that I knew came from a deep, personal place. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Lord knows, I wish I'd had the power to do that a few times in my life," she sighed, looking off at her flowers. "You know, that man, he didn't just disrespect you. He disrespected your grandfather, who couldn't even walk into a bank in his town. He disrespected me, who used to count every penny and pray the teller wouldn't look at me with pity. When you stood up to him, you weren't just standing up for Ava Monroe, CEO. You were standing up for all of us." Her words were a balm on my wounded spirit. She was right. This wasn't just my fight. My phone buzzed. It was David. "It's done," he said, his voice a mix of awe and satisfaction. "The transfer is in motion. United Mutual's regional VP is already on the line with our legal team. And the CEO of Unity First Bank, the black-owned one, just called me personally," he said. "Welcome home, welcome home." A lump formed in my throat. "And Henderson?" I asked quietly. His corporate access was revoked within minutes of my call to legal. "The regional director is on his way to the branch personally," David said. "You didn't just fire him, Ava. You launched a missile." I should have felt triumphant, but I just felt tired. "Thank you, David, for everything. It's my job to protect the company," he said. "And you are the company, Ava." After I hung up, my mother squeezed my hand. "So, does this mean I don't get my piano?" she asked with a little twinkle in her eye. I laughed, a real laugh this time. It felt good. "Oh, you're getting your piano," I said. "I'm just going to have to pay for it with a check from a much better bank." The next day, I walked into the main branch of Unity First Bank. The president, a sharp and warm woman named Mrs. Dubois, met me at the door herself. The atmosphere was completely different. It was professional, but it was also vibrant, filled with a sense of community and shared purpose. There were no suspicious looks, no condescending tones. I was just a client, a valued one. I got the cashier's check for $22,000 in under 5 minutes. Later that afternoon, I went back to the old man's house. I handed him the check. He looked at it, then at me. "I thought you were bringing cash," he said, a little wary. There was a change of plans, I told him with a small smile. "My old bank and I had a disagreement about the meaning of customer service. I assure you, this check is good." He must have seen the truth in my eyes, because he nodded and led me to the piano. It was beautiful, its polished wood gleaming in the afternoon light. I ran a finger over the ivory keys. They were cool to the touch, humming with a century of unspoken music. A week later, on my mother's birthday, the piano was sitting in her living room, a giant red bow on top. When she saw it, she just stopped in the doorway, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. They weren't tears of sorrow or frustration. They were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. She walked over to it, touched the keys, and then looked at me. "Oh, Ava." That evening, she sat down and played. Her fingers were clumsy at first, hesitant after so many years, But then, she found a simple melody from her childhood, and the notes filled the house. The music was sweet and a little bit sad, full of love and sacrifice and dreams deferred in. Finally, realized, listening to that music, I knew I had done the right thing. Firing Mr. Henderson hadn't brought me joy, but this seeing my mother's face, hearing her play the song of her own history on the piano I had bought for her. This was everything. That the world is full of Hendersons, people who will try to make you feel small, who will judge you based on their own narrow prejudices. You can't get rid of all of them, but you can refuse to let them have power over you. You can draw a line. You can take your business and your $94 million elsewhere. You can choose where you belong. And as my mother played, I knew I was home.